I'm John McKee, editor of Messianic Apologetics, Messianicapologetics.net. And I would like to welcome you to this episode of Messianic Insider, your theology and news roundup for August the 18th, 2025. Right now, right before we went live, there are certainly activity taking place in Washington at the White House with President Trump, President Zelensky, and many other European and NATO leaders. So Friday afternoon, of course, we had the summit between President Trump and President Putin in Alaska. Now we've got a summit taking place in Washington. And so along with this, I hope, given the uncertainties of the global situation right now, you take a special moment every day and you pray for peace in Israel and you pray for peace in Ukraine. Because even though God has been stirring up many of us to pay attention to what is going on the world scene, we don't want to be caught speaking presumptuously regarding how soon or not so soon is the end time scenario going to play out. But without peace, we have instability, and with instability, people are afraid. So pray for peace in Israel and Ukraine. And of course, we will continue to wait and see how different things unfold. All right, so before we get started, we do this every Monday. If you have not already, please do go to Messianicapologetics.net. Here in the right-hand column, you see blog notifications. Be automatically notified by email when Messianic Apologetics is updated. So be sure, put your email there, hit subscribe, and then you'll be asked to confirm. So whenever we add something new or reintroduce something to Messianicapologetics.net, you should receive a notification for that. That's different from our email announcement list, which you can subscribe to by clicking on the envelope icon right there. Those are updates we specifically have to put together. Okay, our theology roundup on Mondays is usually shorter because of all of the news we have to go through from the weekend. But our subject matter of abortion is very important. We're going to be discussing it today as well as tomorrow, because last week we got some feedback from someone who said, well, guess what? God is pro-choice. And of course, the reason why God is pro-choice is because until a fetus takes its first breath, it's not a human being. I don't know how many of you have ever heard that line of reasoning. So today and tomorrow, because of that, we're going to be discussing the whole issue of abortion and the ethical factors which go into that, because this is something you're going to be hearing more and more frequently from progressive Christians, and you may have seen various Jews in some of your Torah studies possibly refer to it as well. It's not a human being until the fetus takes its first breath, because after all, Adam breathed the breath of life in, so God breathed the breath of life into Adam. So what do we do with this? How do we sort through this? Okay, so on the Messianic Apologetics website, we'll go back there. Here you see the FAQ Volume 2 section. So FAQs, click on Volume 2. This is an ongoing selection of frequently asked questions I've been working on since 2022 to the present. It's not on a particular timetable. It'll be finished when the file gets big enough. The number 1 FAQ, they're all listed in alphabetical order, is, of course, abortion. So click there, and then a PDF file will open up. So we're going to cover this issue today as well as tomorrow. So here, I am encountering many progressive Christians and Jews who support abortion. This is very confusing to me. I need some better answers to their statements about human life. Because even though all of us in the Messianic community will pretty much be seen to oppose abortion on demand, there are still various factors we have to sort through as it has been approached in religious history and some of the things we are encountering today. Abortion is widely regarded to be a medical procedure which terminates a pregnancy. Abortion became a significant social and religious debate in the second half of the 20th century, notably via the emergence of both the pro-life and pro-choice movements. Frequently, religious fundamentalists are those who are seen to oppose any and all forms of abortion. Yet, the ethical debate over abortion is often not as simple as some may think it is. It does concern factors of when a human fetus can be viably regarded as a person, but also involves factors of the status of the mother, procreation, and other involved parties. From the religious side, the considerable bulk of the controversy over abortion can concern those few or specific situations when the termination of a pregnancy might be an option. Within a great deal of the pro-life side, among conservative evangelicals, is seen a biblical emphasis on choosing life, Deuteronomy 30, verse 19, creation in the womb, Psalm 139, 13 and 14, Isaiah 44, 1 and 2, Jeremiah 1, 5, and the unique movement of a fetus in the womb, implying a degree of personhood, Luke 141, 44. Among progressive Christians who are pro-choice, biblical arguments are made regarding how an unborn fetus is widely considered to be property and not a person, Exodus 21, 22, and 23, and how human personhood does not begin until first physical breath, Genesis 2, 7. Ancient Christian tradition from the 2nd century CE, based on the second commandment, Exodus 20, verse 13, Deuteronomy 5, 17, asserted how you shall not abort a child or commit infanticide, Didache 2, 2. Philosophically, there have definitely been discussions and debates throughout Christian history regarding when a fetus in the womb starts to become a viable human being or person. Many Christians have regarded such a developed human life to begin immediately at conception. There have, however, been dissenting views, suggesting that it takes multiple weeks for a fertilized embryo to develop the major characteristics of personhood. This does not mean, however, that unnecessary termination of a pregnancy would be appropriate. Secularists with no religious orientation to matters such as conception or fetal development may often be seen to conclude that what is considered personhood is not possible prior to birth, so that an unborn fetus, while regarded as human, may not necessarily be regarded as a person. It is reasonable to assume that some of the Jewish approach to the issue of abortion, witnessed across a great deal of history, has been more liberal than the traditional Christian approach. This hardly means that all observant Jews in history should be classified as pro-choice, though. Exodus 21, 22, and 23, and the unnecessary or accidental killing of an unborn child did not carry the death penalty for the offender, which has been regarded as meaning that a fetus is not a full person. It is definitely witnessed in the Mishnah that the termination of a fetus is permitted in the instance to save the life of a mother, Mishnah Ohalot 7:6. Discussions regarding other permissible instances for abortion, not only involving situations such as rape, but also the mental health and disposition of the mother, have been witnessed in Jewish history. Terminating a pregnancy due to various degenerative diseases or abnormalities has been discussed in more modern Judaism. A great number of the supreme ethical questions surrounding the debate over abortion involves what actually constitutes human personhood. Various Jewish opinions will assert that a fetus is not fully formed and thus cannot be a viable human person until around 41 days after conception. And what is the Genesis 2:7 breath of life? Is it something entirely material, or could it be actually something immaterial? Among various philosophies of personhood, emergentism is one which suggests that the human personality is a combination of both physical and immaterial components and would hardly be supportive of something such as abortion. Progressive Christians and Jews are seen to support abortion not just because of a small handful of exceptions, but as a form of contraception alongside of the birth control pill or condoms. Today's Messianic community, while almost uniformly opposing abortion, tends to be rather underdeveloped in terms of its understanding of the specifics of the abortion debate. Customarily, among many conservative evangelicals who may be considered pro-life, it is still widely recognized how there are three major exceptions for the termination of a pregnancy. Number one, to save the life of a mother. Number two, an instance of rape. And number three, an instance of incest. These all have to be considered on a case-by-case basis. There would be people in today's Messianic movement likely seen to agree with this, and others who may be seen to oppose any and all forms of abortion. For certain, this adds a great deal of difficulty to a Messianic rabbi or congregational leader who may have to counsel a couple facing difficulty with a pregnancy and at best keep their possible decisions confidential. Okay, so that concludes this frequently asked questions entry on abortion. And of course, this is something which has been raised from feedback we got last week. It's not a human person. It's just a fetus until it takes its first physical breath. Because the claim is that Adam was just, he wasn't a person until God breathed the breath of life into him. This isn't the full discussion. Tomorrow we'll continue with this because the issue of what the breath of life actually is deeply tied not only to personhood, human uniqueness, but even various afterlife expectations, and whether or not the human person is entirely an entity of this dimension or is an entity of both this dimension as well as another dimension. So what does it mean to be created in the image of God? And does that at all mean that a human being has both material as well as immaterial components? So we're going to be getting into that more tomorrow because it's deeply tied to this abortion debate. No, I am not someone to at all support abortion on demand, abortion as a form of contraception. What we do see here in the United States, especially with Roe v. Wade being overturned a number of years ago, is that the number of abortions has gone way, way down. But throughout both Jewish as well as Christian history, there have been certainly ethical debates. Is it permitted to terminate a pregnancy because of extenuating circumstances to save the life of a mother, rape, incest, or some other kind of mental trauma? All of which have to be determined on a case-by-case basis. Yet those constitute less than 2% of all abortions. So most people who get abortion today get abortion because of irresponsible sexual intercourse when they should have been employing contraception. All right, so that finishes up our theology roundup. Okay, our news roundup. And of course, we always do the news roundup after the theology roundup because all of the news items we go through are time sensitive. And we know from the close of last week President Trump and President Putin had their summit in Alaska. Right now, as we speak, President Zelensky is in Washington. Other major European and NATO leaders are in Washington meeting with President Trump. Yes, pray for peace in Ukraine. Also, of course, pray for peace in Israel. Okay, so before we get started, the following articles and social media posts are employed in good faith via the principle of fair use, which allows copyrighted material to be used for the purposes of news reporting, teaching, scholarship, research, and commentary. And this episode began with a fair use notice. All of the news stories we're about to go through will be linked later today when this episode is archived at messianicapologetics.net, so you can go read them in greater detail for yourself, watch the different news clips, etc. All right, so we start out with a story from Charisma, August the 15th. Top 5 biblical signs of the end times unfolding before our eyes. And to them, these include, among other things, pestilences, earthquakes in diverse places, wars and rumors of wars, widespread deception, the rebirth of Israel as the prophetic linchpin. Okay, I'm not going to say I totally disagree with this. It does kind of go, right down as bullet points, as it were, from Matthew 24. But there is something I was taught many, many years ago regarding those building expectations from Yeshua's Olivet Discourse. Yes, you're going to hear wars and rumors of wars. What do you think the Russia-Ukraine thing is? Pestilences, famines, earthquakes, massive world changes. But those have been going on for a very, very long time. It's only been in the past 2 centuries or so when they've actually been recorded. So we can actually look back and we can say, oh, these are the different cycles of tectonic shift, or this is the different hurricane cycles, whatever it might be. You're going to hear about all these things. The major sign, which is not referenced in that article, is, according to Yeshua, the abomination of desolation, the termination of animal sacrifices on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. It's also referred to in Paul's writing to the Thessalonians, referred to in Daniel chapter 9. This is why many people are looking for the reconstruction of the temple. They're looking for a third temple. That will be the decisive sign of the last days. And of course, right now there's a lot of talk and speculation about the red heifer. I still haven't seen enough to convince me that it's super important right now, because I've been hearing it for many years. But I can't, as I told someone over the weekend, when the Orthodox, the Temple Mount faithful, are going to be permitted some kind of a peace, some kind of a space on the Temple Mount to offer animal sacrifices, all of a sudden, many of the disagreements about, well, we're not quite sure this red heifer is authentic enough or viable enough, a lot of those disagreements are going to fall flat, because it's like, hey, there's a white hair, bling, without the presence of a temple or a Levitical priesthood and sacrificial system for almost 2 millennia, religious Jews have had a lot of time on their hands to debate whether or not this is viable or that is viable with a red heifer. But as soon as they have the means to start sacrificing on the Temple Mount, a lot of those disagreements will probably not be as important as they once were. All right, from Open Source Intel Defender, August the 15th, you all probably saw this. U.S. President Donald J. Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin stand on stage together briefly and shake hands again at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage, Alaska. And I certainly was watching a lot of these events on Friday afternoon. This story has circulated among different venues, so this is what came across my path. 15th of August, Fox News Instagram. Hillary Clinton says she would nominate Trump for Nobel Peace Prize if he secures Ukraine deal with Putin. All right. So we'll see if something like that actually happens. New York Post, 15th of August. So this was also from Friday. Pro-Ukrainian protesters gathered in Anchorage, Alaska, ahead of the high-stakes summit between President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin, which is meant to lay the groundwork for a ceasefire. And yeah, here you see people who are comparing these peace negotiations, these peace summits, Trump and Putin. Not quite sure what's going to come from Trump and Zelensky and what's happening in Washington. But there are people who are definitely comparing this to the Munich Agreement between Hitler and Neville Chamberlain, which ceded the Sudetenland to Nazi Germany, and then later involved the Nazi expanse over Central Europe, taking all of Czechoslovakia, led to the conflict with Poland, of course, in the Second World War. I will say this, in an open and free democracy, these people have the right to protest. These people have the right to their opinion. Is it going to be that drastic? We don't know. But we know that President Trump's major purpose in wanting to see a peace agreement emerge between Russia and Ukraine is to stop the killing. That's what his major purpose is. So yes, we do pray for peace in Ukraine and also peace in Israel. But yeah, this is part of that general rubric of wars and rumors of wars. But in this case, with Russia, we are dealing, this is just the fact, we're dealing with the world's #1 nuclear power. From CBS News on Instagram, August the 15th, from Vladimir Zelensky, Ukrainian president. Everyone needs a just end to the war. Ukraine is ready to work as productively as possible to bring the war to an end, and we count on a strong position from America. Everything will depend on this. The Russians factor in American strength. Make no mistake, strength. Okay, so we will see what the next week brings. We've had the summit in Alaska. We've got what's taking place in Washington right now. Is that going to lead to anything else? All right, so some of you all are familiar with how last week there was an interview on Tucker Carlson with Mother Agapia Stephanopoulos. That is George Stephanopoulos' sister. She is an Orthodox Christian in Gaza, Palestinian areas, and she was basically saying that Hamas is just fine. And there have been a lot of responses to that. So here's a worthwhile response that you can watch. It's about 3.5 minutes from Shadi Kalul, founder of Israeli Christian Aramaic NGO. It's Maronite Christian, patriotic Israeli, former Knesset candidate, advocacy for Christian Israeli Aramaic rights. So he is a Christian who lives in Israel. And he says, Tucker Carlson's guest tried to spread lies in the name of us, indigenous Christians in Israel. The world must not believe her. Here's the truth. So a lot of people are pushing back from Tucker Carlson's interview last week. Okay, so here you see from the New York Post, August the 15th, Friday, President Trump displayed confidence as he met Russian President Vladimir Putin on the tarmac at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage, Alaska, according to a body language expert. So, Trump is displaying, apparently, according to body language experts, strength in facing down Vladimir Putin. Of course, are there other opinions out there? Yes. Some believe he's capitulating to Putin. Try to look at this issue, Russia, Ukraine, U.S. involvement. Try to, as best as you can, look at this long term. Just like a number of months ago, we looked at the events leading up to the 12-day war, Israel attacking Iran, and then later the U.S. involvement in the 12-day war. We have to look at this conflict in the exact same way. See how everything builds upon itself. All right. This is reposted from Charlie Kirk on August the 15th. Vladimir Putin confirms that if Trump were president in 2022, there would be no war. Yes, and a lot of us are definitely of that opinion. If Trump had been president when this conflict had started, it would have stopped immediately. If not, it wouldn't have even wouldn't even started at all. So, yeah, a figure like Vladimir Putin responds to American strength, not weakness. Here from Fox News, 15th of August. This is Friday evening. Trump, as Putin and Trump were having their press conference, we'll speak to you very soon and probably see you again very soon. Thank you very much, Vladimir. So, according to Trump, meeting was extremely productive. So that's why we're watching this very closely. Is it going to lead to something else? Rapid Response 47. I'm going to start making a few phone calls and tell them that, speaking of NATO, Ukraine, what happened. But we had an extremely productive meeting and many points were agreed to. There are just a very few that are left. From Instagram, Breitbart, August the 15th. Trump says, great progress made in meeting with Putin, but no deal until there's a deal. Yeah, because it's not something which just involves Russia. It also involves Ukraine. And of course, what about American and European interests? That's what we're going to be looking at and seeing unfold this week. Rapid Response 47. So this was an interview on Friday evening that Donald Trump had with Sean Hannity. We were together almost 3 hours, and it was very extensive. A lot of points we agreed on. Now it's really up to President Zelensky to get it done, and if they'd like, I'll be at that next meeting. From Visegrad 24, this is on Saturday morning, August the 16th. Trump confirms that the discussions have moved from being about a ceasefire directly to a peace agreement. So is that something, we're not going to necessarily be arguing for a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. We want to move to a peace agreement. Is that something which can accelerate this being resolved or not? Okay, let's change things up just a little bit from Newsmax on August the 16th. 100 Days of Pope Leo XIV, a calm papacy that avoids polemics, is coming into focus. So, 100 days for Pope Leo, as Robert Prevost marks his 100th day as Pope Leo XIV this weekend. The contours of his pontificate have begun to come into relief, primarily where he shows continuity with Francis and where he signals change. Perhaps the biggest takeaway is that after 12, sometimes turbulent years under Francis, a certain calm and reserve have returned to the papacy. And indeed, while we don't want to be presumptuous because this pope has only been in office now for 100 days or 100 days plus, it would seem to me, and I think this is a conclusion being drawn by a lot of people, the papacy of Francis was just too turbulent, too up and down. Francis was just too different from more traditional popes who had preceded him, like Benedict XVI, John Paul II. He was a little too progressive. So Pope Leo is, more of a centrist kind of pope. People on the right, people on the left in Catholicism can handle him, and we're going to see kind of a slowing down, as it were, as the changes spearheaded by Francis are more absorbed, as it were, over the next perhaps 5 to 10 years. That's one theory. Of course, in today's Messianic community, a lot of people don't like Catholicism. They look at Catholicism as not only the Revelation 17 and 18, whore of Babylon. Sorry, that's the way many people look at him, but they look at a future pope as the false prophet of Revelation. I don't think Leo the 14th is that false prophet. He might be someone who, in fact, slows down Catholicism's possible involvement in end time events rather than accelerates it. But hey, we'll see. I mean, it's only 100 plus a few more days into his papacy. Okay, so from Visegrad, and this is August the 16th. The time on it is 5:50 a.m. Breaking: Macron, Starmer, Merz, Maloney, Tusk, and Stubb release a joint statement after the Trump-Putin meeting. So we know, of course, right now today, these same leaders are in Washington, and they're going to be meeting with President Trump regarding his meeting with President Putin. But whatever agreement comes out of ending the Russia-Ukraine conflict, it's going to be something which involves the Europeans because, I mean, geographically, they are right there. So it does affect them in some way. And so a lot of them see that if you capitulate to Putin, their mindset is if he's allowed to overrun Ukraine, we're going to be next, and we can't permit that. So we do pray for peace in Ukraine, but we know that these kinds of things change from day to day. So you can go look at that statement in fuller detail later. Okay, from Open Source Intel Defender. This is actually from August the 15th. Normally, this is the order in which I find these articles, find these posts. According to Reuters, U.S. President Donald J. Trump hand-delivered a letter from First Lady Melania Trump to Russian President Vladimir Putin during today's summit in Anchorage, Alaska, speaking about the plight of and calling for the return of thousands of Ukrainian children kidnapped by Russia. Yeah, war is terrible. War is not good. War affects children. It affects the elderly and the infirm. And as the song goes, war, what is it good for, right? So we do pray for peace. And there was, of course, the moment when both President Trump and President Putin got into President Trump's limousine as they went off to their summit. And they did have some time just one-on-one with themselves. So, of course, we're not privy to the conversation they had. We don't know some of the things which were communicated between the two of them about this conflict and about how they want to move forward. But yes, I do think in all likelihood, the wheels are in motion for some kind of resolution to this to take place. That's what we are praying for. From Visegrad 24, and here's some other things. This is from Saturday morning at 10:18, August the 16th. New York Times, Axios, and Bloomberg report on Putin's peace deal demands presented to Trump in Alaska. So this is what Putin is pushing for. And of course, the big one involves Russia gets the parts of the Zaporizhzhia, I mispronounced that, and Kherson regions it currently holds. In exchange, Putin will sign a written promise that Russia won't attack or occupy any new territories in Ukraine and Europe. So really, the success or not so much of a peace agreement ending the Russia-Ukraine conflict, it's going to come down to territory. It's going to come down to land and who's going to be flexible, who's not going to be flexible, or what is going to come from that. That's where we see Zelensky and various Europeans say, no, not a single square inch of Ukrainian land goes to Russia. And of course, Russia would probably come back and say, well, what's the situation on the ground? And so it's a tough fix. There's no doubt about that. Okay, the other situation, pray for peace in Israel. From Vivid on X, August the 16th. Benjamin Netanyahu declared tonight that he will only accept a deal that includes the release of all hostages in a single phase. Demilitarization of the strip, that's Gaza, Israeli security control over the Strip, and the complete surrender of Hamas. Yeah, I mean, I can just see, just as this Russia-Ukraine situation, it's hitting the airwaves. Trump has been able to cut some peace deals recently. India, Pakistan, Thailand and Cambodia, Azerbaijan and Armenia. Now we've got Russia, Ukraine. If he's able to take care of that, the next situation is obviously Israel and Gaza. All right, here's something I thought I should pass along. This is from Epic Times on Instagram. Scientists uncover hidden cancer risk in tattoos. Many people choose to get tattoos as self-expression, acts of remembrance, or to signify transformation. But even when the meaning runs deep, tattoos can have consequences, some only now coming to light. Now, within the instruction of the Torah is delivered the command not to cut oneself or tattoo oneself for the dead. And so that is extrapolated as meaning that tattooing is something almost universally prohibited by Holy Scripture. And indeed, throughout a great deal of Jewish history, the Jewish people have not tattooed, whether it's to memorialize the dead as some kind of an ancient Canaanite ritual or just to decorate themselves, because human beings are created in the image of God and we're supposed to honor our physical bodies. And the question is always raised when you get a tattoo and you get some kind of body piercing, what is the purpose of it? Now, I have definitely encountered people who say, well, I don't see tattooing explicitly prohibited in Scripture. If I want to decorate myself with a tattoo, it's just tattooing to memorialize the dead. Ironically enough, even though many people might not think that a lot of tattooing is meant to memorialize the dead, a lot of tattooing actually is employed to memorialize the dead indirectly. So a lot of your old sailor tattoos or, Mom, God bless America. Why would you get a tattoo? God bless America with an American flag or something, or like the famous tattoo Sean Connery had, Scotland Forever. Tied into that is to remember those who have given their lives, right? So some people may not think it's tattooing for the dead, but really it ends up becoming tattooing for the dead. But even with, one's interpretation of finer details involving tattooing, this news article highlights something very important. It might indeed come with a hidden cancer risk. And how many people today are getting, not just a little tattoo on their ankle or a little tattoo, an American flag, something like that, but they're getting big, giant tattoos down their arm, big, giant tattoos down their legs. And one of the reasons I have never gotten a tattoo is precisely because my father died of melanoma, which is a form of skin cancer. So I've got to, regularly check myself, and I've got to be able to screen my arm for moles and abnormal growths, possibly. Well, if I got a tattoo, that would obscure being able to see them. So, of course, a lot of people who have tattoos, they got them young in life, they regret it. God looks beyond these kinds of things for certain. There's also an entire medical science now. People can get their tattoos removed. It is expensive, but before you get a tattoo, consider possible health risks to it. And I remember many years ago, at the turn of the millennium, people were saying, these people getting these big giant tattoos along their arm, and it's being normalized in a lot of Christianity. They're going to think absolutely nothing of taking the mark of the beast should it come across the scene, because they're already conditioned to, alter their bodies. So that's another thing we have to consider. Okay, so here's a post from Vivid on X, August the 16th, Saturday afternoon. No matter what happens, I will forever love the United States. This is what we are taught in Israel. We are forever allies. I know that the vast majority of Americans stand with us. Take note, that is today. What is tomorrow going to bring? And, well, of course, you have those on the progressive left. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free and all of that sort of thing. What about those on the conservative right, Christian nationalist types, those who really think that, well, the church is some new Israel, and or we just can't continue to send billions of dollars to Israel? What is the next 5 to 10 years going to bring in terms of conservative support for Israel? Yeah, and that's something which we've got to take serious note of, especially those of us in apologetics. From Breitbart, August the 16th, nothing to see here. World Economic Forum, internal investigation clears founder Klaus Schwab of wrongdoing. Nothing to see here. Everyone move along. You working class peasants should know by now to mind your elite betters and shut up. An internal investigation conducted by the World Economic Forum has determined that there was no evidence that founder and former chairman Klaus Schwab committed wrongdoing during his time at the helm of the top globalist institution. And who's Klaus Schwab? Great Reset architect, Klaus Schwab. Some of you all have heard the lines, "You will own nothing and you will be happy." And not that Klaus Schwab is the future Antichrist or beast, even though some have thought that he was. Pay attention to the World Economic Forum because that or its successor is something which is likely to spearhead global government and see a lot of our freedoms and liberties and expression, ability to express ourselves eroded. World Economic Forum is not a good thing. Okay, from Open Source Intel, this is August the 17th, so this is Sunday morning. Palestinian sources report that armed groups in northern Gaza have captured hundreds of terrorists suspected of being Hamas fighters. Okay, the suspects have been handed over to the IDF and are now being questioned. Very interesting report. So yes, that's the way I take it. Very interesting report. There is the belief that everyone in Gaza, every Palestinian is just sold out to Hamas. They're sold out to the destruction of Israel. But actually, in this case, if there's truth to this, there are Palestinians in Gaza, especially after seeing what's taken place in this ongoing conflict. And they're like, look, let's go get these terrorists. Let's capture them. Let's turn them over to the IDF. I have to believe that there's some Palestinians, they want this conflict over. They want to see some kind of peace emerge, and they want to rebuild their lives. I have to believe that. All right, so here is some sad news. This is from yesterday, 17th of August, the New York Post. But this has gone all over different venues. So this is the first one which came up. Terrence Stamp, who is best known for his roles in the Christopher Reeve Superman movies and Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, has passed away. The beloved actor's family announced the news in a statement to Reuters on August the 17th. And first comment here, RIP, rest in peace, Chancellor Valorum. He played Chancellor Valorum on Star Wars, The Phantom Menace. And of course, his successor was Palpatine, who later became the Emperor. So yeah, this is just sad, but a lot of us definitely impacted by films like Superman and him playing General Zod. There will never be another one. Okay, from Open Source Intel, August the 17th, Netanyahu, I kept my promise and did not allow the creation of a Palestinian state despite heavy pressure at home and from U.S. presidents. Yeah, this is the next situation Trump is going to have to deal with should Israel and Gaza, should Russia, Ukraine be taken care of. Pray for peace in Israel, pray for peace in Ukraine. Okay, from Open Source Intel Defender, August the 17th, Russian President Vladimir Putin agreed to allow the United States and Russia to provide robust security guarantees in Ukraine, similar to those under NATO's Article 5, during Friday's meeting with President Trump and other senior officials in Anchorage, Alaska, according to U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. So, of course, one of the causes of this Russia-Ukraine war has believed to be, it was agreed, decades ago that Ukraine would never join NATO. And yet, was Ukraine going to join NATO? Well, here, Ukraine can have some kind of an association with the Western powers, an association like NATO, but not NATO. Okay. Of course, we know that these kinds of negotiation points are all subject to change. Open source Intel Defender, nearly half a dozen European leaders are now set to attend tomorrow's meeting at the White House between U.S. President Donald J. Trump and Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, which has evolved into less of a meeting and more of a partial summit by NATO. Of course, that's something which was going on right before we got started here. And of course, you see the big three right there: German Chancellor Merz, British Prime Minister Starmer, French President Macron, and then, of course, some of these others, notably Mark Rutte, the Secretary General NATO. Yeah, this is something which, okay, it does affect Europe. I get that. I don't have a problem with Europe being consulted. The question is, how flexible or not so much are they going to be when they go into negotiations? And we don't know right now, but are we going to have another summit near the end of the week, sometime next week, with Zelensky and Putin, or are things just going to fall flat? All right, from August the 17th, yesterday evening, 8:31, reposted by Open Source Intel Defender Donald J. Trump. In the lead up to tomorrow's meeting between U.S. President Donald J. Trump and Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky at the White House, alongside several European leaders, Trump states in a post on Truth Social that Ukraine will not get Crimea back and will not join NATO. Okay. Four more news stories to go through. From Breitbart, August the 18th, ball is now in Zelensky's court, says Trump, as European leaders arrive in Washington for White House talks. And of course, that is what we are waiting to see the result of, and we'll probably be monitoring it throughout the day. From Open Source Intel Defender, this is from this morning, August the 18th. U.S. President Donald J. Trump stated in a post earlier on Truth Social that the remaining hostages in Gaza will only be released after Hamas is confronted and destroyed, adding that the sooner this takes place, the better the chances of success will be. President Trump then proceeds to list several of the achievements he has accomplished since January. Indeed, President Trump sees himself on a roll, all of these peace agreements he's been able to put together. So, Russia, Ukraine, and he hopes to use that momentum to get Israel, Gaza figured out. And it should not escape our notice, the fall high holidays are going to be here in just a month or so. So, along with that, not only is there a lot of prayer and intercession taking place, what's going to happen with Ukraine? What's going to happen with Israel? The anticipation of certain events happening builds with that. Now, that's happened every year. I've been in the Messianic movement, so we don't want to speak presumptuously, but we do want to see the Lord move in a unique way, and if possible, the world brought from the brink of disaster. From Open Source Intel Defender 1028, August the 18th, so this is from only a few hours ago today, Hamas has reportedly notified mediators of its acceptance of a U.S. and Arab negotiated ceasefire agreement presented earlier today to their delegation in Egypt, according to Reuters. And then finally, from Newsmax, August the 18th today, Trump, Hamas must be destroyed for hostages return. President Donald Trump on Monday said Israeli hostages will be returned only after the Hamas terrorist organization is confronted and destroyed. So, yes, the two main things we see in front of us on the global plane are the Russia-Ukraine war and the Israel-Hamas, the Gaza conflict. And are we going to see an end to this? Pray for peace. That's all we can do. And pray that the killing stops. That's all we can do. But hopefully the Lord doesn't have to use major drama to get our attention. Because doubtlessly, there are a lot of questions circulating. They do every year when the fall high holidays come up. What has happened in the past year? What is happening in the next year? When you are serving with a ministry like ours, Outreach Israel, Messianic Apologetics, we constantly ask ourselves questions about the future of the Messianic movement. What is going to happen? Who's going to be around or not around in the next year? And along with that, what do we need to be doing in order to facilitate stability and help further the mission of God? So, I just want to thank those of you all who join us with these live streams and podcasts on what I like to consider to be the ongoing conversation. There's a lot happening. There's a lot to discuss. We're not in the same world we were in a mere 5 years ago. And we use a platform like Messianic Insider 5 times a week to keep that discussion going and to always be asking ourselves, how can we be that much more effective in the service of the King? So I would just like to express my gratitude, my thanks to you on behalf of Outreach Israel Ministries and Messianic Apologetics for your ongoing prayers, encouragement, and support of all of our efforts. I encourage you to visit the Messianic Apologetics website, messianicapologetics.net, where you can see a wide array of free articles, FAQ entries. You can go into our archives and you can see previous episodes of Messianic Insider, McKee Moment Shorts, etc. We'll see you again tomorrow with another episode of Messianic Insider. Until then, may God bless you, shalom, and take care.